Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Ask the Expert session this morning on home working. I'm really pleased to be hosting this morning's session, and we've got a great panel of experts that are offering us the opportunity to pick our brains and understand, I guess, where we need to focus our attention regarding home working. My name is Pauline Cochrane. I'm Head of Research and Partnerships at CCA, and I'll be hosting this morning's discussion. I guess I want to be really clear at the beginning. This is an opportunity for you to post your questions to our panel of experts. So there's some functionality I just want to run through as to how you can do that. You should be able to see on the right-hand side of your screen that there's a Q&A function. So if you've got any questions as we go through this morning's session or anything burning at the top of your mind at the moment, then please use that functionality to post your question, and we'll get through them towards the end of the session. We may, depending on where we're going with the conversation, pick them up as we go. So no problem at all, just to post them as we have our discussion. Before we kick off this morning, I just wanted to run through some of the conversations, I guess, that we've been having with members over the last couple of weeks during these really unprecedented times, and how people are trying to manage to cope with keeping their operations as a normal, for want of a better word, as they possibly can, and some of the challenges that they're being facing during that time frame. So lots of people are working with outsourcing partners, and that includes, for home working as well as still potentially some people being on site, trying to maybe take some learnings from other countries who that have perhaps experienced or are further down the line with their experience in managing COVID-19 than perhaps we are, or then understanding the impact of what service levels will be available to customers should that country go into lockdown as well. So lots of conversations around that. Some really practical things as well around managing essential service. So thinking about things like sick pay, and the need to come to work versus having lower income from just sick pay benefits, prioritising core business versus perhaps project work that's been going on, and also working very closely with marketing to suspend non-essential campaigns, because obviously that's putting potentially added pressure onto the service operation. So really trying to be much more proactive about communicating with customers as to the best ways for them to connect with different organisations. Different preventative measures, and managing the actual spread of the virus around, cleaning, hand sanitising, and deep cleaning of cases being diagnosed, and all of these different management techniques that organisations are working through. But I want to obviously focus specifically on home working today, and that's something that's been top of mind for people over the last few weeks, and trying to make that work for them as best they can, and looking at some different options around that. People are maybe trying to think about using some days of the week in a centre and some days not, and that again will have changed since we had those conversations maybe even a week ago, particularly with the announcements earlier this week from government. And then where possible, trying to shift the majority or all of the service to home working if that's at all possible, and then also trying to understand what channels can be shifted much more easily than others. And for most organisations, certainly what we're hearing, the biggest challenge is trying to shift voice to home working. The other channels that are perhaps more digitally enabled are a wee bit easier, but depending on your own telephony platform and setup, shifting voice can be a wee bit more difficult. So some of the things that we'll probably cover off through the call as we go through the conversation this morning. I just wanted to highlight just some points that we've covered so far, and this will be ongoing. So we're having weekly conversations, sometimes even more frequent than that, with different members, and trying to just provide the best support and the best connectivity across the network as we can, to make sure that everyone's able to learn from each other. And similarly, that's what we're trying to do today. One of the things that we did put out last week was a business continuity planning and home working survey, just to try and get a bit of a feel for where organisations are focusing their efforts. And I'm just going to take you through very quickly just some of the initial findings from the responses that we've had so far. And you can see these on screen. And Sorry, I should have said at the beginning, we're also recording this session, so please don't worry too much if you miss some of the points that are being covered. We'll be sharing the recording afterwards, and you'll be able to get the chance to revisit some of those points as well. So from the points, the responses that we've had so far, so most people, as you can see, have had a business continuity plan that's helped them respond to the virus, and for the majority, it's being able to activate their home working contingency plan as part of that. For those that didn't have home working as part of the contingency plan, they now do, so significant numbers there, and understanding that that's an absolute requirement now as organisations respond to what's a very fluid situation. And as I touched on earlier, there's particular channels that seem to be easier. Interestingly, from our survey, voice calls for some are actually proving quite easy, but obviously that will be dictated through your platform. And the biggest challenges so far were around SMS and messaging. So you might find some, I guess, some things in there that seem familiar to you as well. So hopefully that is useful. Looking at the challenges to implementing home working, the biggest piece is clearly around technology and then reliance on connectivity. I think we've all had different experiences around what it's been like to connect at home when you would normally be in an environment where you may be working from home on your own, but all of a sudden there's whole families working from home trying to use the same bandwidth, and that's creating connectivity problems as well. So we need to try and, I guess, manage that as best we can. Interestingly, 45% of organisations are prioritising contact from vulnerable customers, but I guess the flip side of that is 55% aren't at the moment. So it's just trying to perhaps work through that and trying to understand, how best to respond in that situation, because that might shift as we go through the next few weeks. Most people had a clearly mapped out process, and the 3/4 there have processes in place to perform wellbeing checks on members who are self-isolating. So again, keeping that connection and communication going between employees and the business. But I want to pick that up as a point with some of the panel as we go through this morning, because that's obviously a big challenge for organisations as they work through how best to manage remote teams. 13% of respondents have closed their internal canteens to minimise cross-contamination. And I guess, as more organisations shift their full operation to home working, that will become less of an issue. But I know from having conversations with members, a lot are asking people to bring in their own cutlery, their own crockery, and use that versus using more communal equipment. So I'm now just going to introduce our panel. So delighted to have a real breadth of experience and knowledge on the panel this morning. A lot of three of the organisations have been core partners of CCA for a long time. So we've got Ken Wheeler from Arise, Richard Kenny from Poly, and Mark Walton from Sonsei. And then really pleased also to have two of our accredited members on the call as well, with Penny Bailey from Guinness Partnership and Jamie Forbes from Scottish Widows. So from the panel that we have, there's a huge amount of experience in working from home, some that's newer than others, and some that perhaps has had to ramp up more quickly in the last few weeks than maybe previously. But really, there's an opportunity here for us to all learn and take forward some of the experiences and some of the knowledge that this group can bring to the session. So to kick us off this morning, I'm going to invite Jamie to just run through what Scottish Widows have been working on by way of their home working proposition, something that they started last year, but clearly had to look at in a different way in light of current circumstances. So Jamie, we should be able to hear you. I'm going to hand over to you now, if that's all right.
Hi, Pauline. Thanks for that. So, just a quick introduction. So, I'm Jamie Forbes. I work in Scottish Widows, and my role title is Colleague and Customer Leader within Workplace Pensions. And so I look after a lot of colleague and customer initiatives, and one of the priorities last year was home working. So we wanted to introduce home working to help transform ways of working. And on the back of colleague survey and colleague feedback, it's always it would be a good thing to work from home. And so we introduced it last year to 10 colleagues working from home, so managing customer demand, your live inbound calls, outbound calls, and your back office work from home. And it was a real success. And then towards the end of 2019 and the start of 2020, we introduced it to an extra 20. So we had in total 30 home workers. But due to the coronavirus pandemic, we're looking to rapidly increase this, and we're doing it as we speak, getting laptops for colleagues and upskilling them, making the necessary guides and support tools so they can work from home. So over the next sort of 5 minutes, what I'm going to do is just go through the slide on the screen there. And these are the top tips that's worked well with me and my team on implementing home working. So we'll just start on the IT access guide and support. So the first thing that I was looking to do was make sure that all the colleagues had the right tools to work from home. So all these colleagues, when we initially did it, we handpicked 10 colleagues that we were fully supportive of in their application, that we thought they'd be able to go home. And they was our more experienced colleagues, so we were fully supportive of them doing it because we could trust them to go and work the systems and tools right away. But due to the pandemic, we're looking to increase it to get as many people to work from home as possible for colleague well-being. We know that there's colleagues that struggle with some of the IT tools and support. So what we've done now is we're looking to do some face-to-face sessions on using laptops, how to use the security tokens, how to use the telephony software and headsets, so making it really basic for them to understand. And what we're also doing is virtual sessions. So we've got colleagues that can't come into the office because they're self-isolating but have laptops. So we're looking to do these sessions online as well to give them the tools and support. As well as that, we also want to make sure that we're covering all our policies, so our agile working policies, our display screen equipment policies, making sure that these colleagues are staying safe and also working securely. Prior to this, we had like a home working agreement, a home working checklist for the colleagues to go through. So this was reviewing some of these things, doing a relearning, so making sure that they were really safe from home. Going on to the bottom part there about ongoing communication, leadership and SME availability. And this is really important. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we had constant support for these colleagues from home. So things we done was implemented rotas for leadership and SMEs for early and late cover and circulating this out and making sure that was very visible. We provided contact details for these people as well to make sure that if we weren't in the office, they could still work remotely as a team. We wanted to also have office communicator tools, so making sure that rather than relying on emails where your inbox is filled up, we had stuff like Lync and Microsoft Office Communicator where we could contact SMEs and leaders quite easily. As well, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just leaving these colleagues to work from home, we were making sure that they were engaged. So we wanted to do stuff like having team huddles online. So I'll come on to that a little bit more in the Line Manager toolkit. We also have virtual team spaces as well, so just places for best collaboration between home workers. So if they come across anything that they feel that wasn't in a guide, they can put it on the site for others to learn. So that was really important. And as well as that, it's just like having the regular check-ins with remote colleagues. So we're asking colleagues, we initially asked colleagues to work from home up to 60% of the time. So that could have been 3 days. But due to this, due to the pandemic at the moment, we're wanting as many people to work from home for the foreseeable future 5 days a week. So engagement can dip a little if you're stuck in the house. So it's making sure that the team leaders and leaders are checking in regularly just to make sure that they're okay. On to that next part there about ongoing performance management. So what we have is we've got like a key metrics survey for line managers to complete on a regular basis. So we had it weekly prior to the pandemic. So they would go in and just review the performance of the colleague to make sure that it's in line with the team's purpose. So looking at quality, complaints, breaches, and telephony performance. So prior to this pandemic, it was natural. You could see the benefits of working from home compared to a colleague in the office. So we always done a comparison, and we could see the benefits very easily. And we also had a colleague survey as well. So we asked colleagues to fill out a survey on a weekly basis, like a heartbeat score, asking if they had any issues with the IT software, communication with leaders, just the things I've covered here. And on a weekly basis, we'd review this, and if there was any questions on a free text bit at the bottom, for example, if they had any difficulties, I would then go and pick that up with them and then look to implement that into one of our guides for the future. So that was really important, getting the colleague and the customer metrics right as well. What I've noticed now, though, is because we're asking people to work from home 5 days a week, I've looked at some of the surveys recently, and it's went down from like 10 to 6s and 7s. And that's purely because they're in the house 5 days a week. And that's not great, being stuck in house, not having that contact with your team and the management. So we're looking at ways of, right, how do we do more engagement activities and make things more connected for these colleagues throughout 2020 if this is going to be a little bit longer term. Going on to the top one there, just about line manager support. So we're asking line managers to do something a little bit different, as in manage a team that don't sit at the desks around you. So we need to make sure that we had the right tools in place for them to do this. So on our home working agreement that we got the line managers and the colleagues to sign, we put like a checklist in place for line managers to review that would give them the tools to support colleagues. So stuff was involving e-learning for line managers to manage remote colleagues, and how they keep them engaged, and how they use the online and digital tools we've got to make sure that they're involving them in huddles and team shouts and things like that. And also as well for line managers support, for example, what I've just done is ask line managers how are they getting on, how do they find it, so just that face-to-face support. So these sort of 4 sections are the things that sort of top tips that I would recommend focusing on to implement home working in your business. And overall that will improve colleague engagement and colleague survey results as well. So Pauline, that's all I've got to say on that, but I'm happy to take any immediate questions just now, or we can carry on with the rest.
Lovely, thanks very much, Jamie. What we'll do is we'll keep questions to the end if that's okay. So if anyone's got questions they want to put to Jamie on the back of that, then please, as I said, do use the Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen, and we can work through that. I'm now going to, thanks for that, Jamie, that was really, really useful, lots of kind of practical tips in there, and there's a few things we'll definitely pick up with you as we go through the session. So I'm just going to put you on mute if that's okay just now, and I'm going to invite Penny in to Penny, you're obviously from Guinness Partnership. You have had quite a different experience perhaps with setting up your operation perhaps more quickly, and maybe not being one that you've had necessarily in a plan. But it'd be really useful if you could talk us through your experience and what you guys have been working on over the last wee while as well. So hopefully we should be able to hear you loud and clear.
Sure. Thanks, Pauline. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep, can hear you.
And you're dead right. Our business continuity plan made a huge assumption that if we had issues, we would probably just relocate staff to different offices. And of course, our IT equipment was all geared up to do that. And the reality was we actually have had to, for the first time ever, particularly in our contact centre world, relocate staff to working from home. And that's always something that, for whatever reason, our chief exec has never been particularly open to, but we have all been extremely surprised at how easy it has turned out to be, which has been great. So our primary focus, once we started to look at this, which was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, to be fair, we were reviewing our business continuity plan with a view to, if we needed to have people working from home, especially our contact centre people, what would that look like? What would we need? So one of the first things we did was our IT colleagues started to do a stock take of the laptops and the dongles and all of the equipment that we would need to see what we actually had in stock. And we did a quick survey around staff to establish what numbers could or couldn't work from home. And as a result of that, they ordered some more laptops and dongles and everything else, which was, it turned out to be a really good thing. That the ironic thing was, at the time, all we heard about was the virus hitting China, and all of our laptops were coming from, yep, you guessed it, China. So we went out with a staff survey then to establish who had equipment at home, who had PCs, who had laptops, who had broadband, who had a space to work, those, kind of basic questions. And then a couple of weeks ago asked the question, if you could work from home, would you? Yes or no? In the meantime, the non-urgent staff who couldn't work from home, we haven't sent them all home at this stage, but if you could work from home, you were asked to work from home, which didn't include the contact centre staff at that time. And what we did then was distribute our contact centre staff across the whole of the building rather than just in the wings that they would normally work from, so that we could put some distance between them. And then last week, all but a handful of staff were at home. So we distributed our laptops, we distributed dongles for those who didn't have broadband, and got them up and running. And I've got to say, we were all very, very pleasantly surprised that A, the IT worked, B, we had very few issues. We had a couple of people struggling to get online, but not an awful lot. So yes, we have got our complete contact centre, which covers all of our customer inquiries and all of our arrears management and rent payments. They are all now working from home, and so far, touch wood, so good. From an IT perspective, we are up and we are running. And that's us so far. Fingers crossed it continues.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Penny. Yeah, I guess there was clearly some fortuitous timing in there for you, by way of doing your audit and stock check and everything else. So maybe someone has a sixth sense that something would come down the line. So yeah, but that's fabulous that it's all worked out that way. And I know that some organisations are even struggling to be able to secure laptops now, and know that some people are actually allowing colleagues to take their desktops home and use that as a way of connecting. And so I guess it is definitely a situation of need must, I think, at the moment. But it'd be good to hear what you guys have done. So thank you for sharing your experience so far. And we will definitely pick your brains as we go through the rest of the session this morning. So I'm now going to invite in our other contributors that we haven't heard from this morning. So we've got Ken Wheeler, VP at Arise. So Arise, for those that aren't familiar, provide a home working solution, but I'll let Ken explain a wee bit more about that when we get him introduced. Richard Kenny, again from Poly, and Poly were previously Plantronics, but again I'll let Richard explain that in a wee bit more detail. And they've been doing home working for quite some time. And then Mark Walton from Sonsei, and again Sonsei are another provider of home working as well. So I'm just going to invite you all in turn just to say a kind of 20 seconds or so about each of you, and then we'll start going through the questions. So Ken, can I ask you to do your kind of very short intro firstly, please?
You can, and good morning everybody. Really pleased to join. So I've been in the contact centre industry just over 20 years. The last 5 years within the work from home environment, working for a specialist provider. So I guess the current situation means I have a good understanding of where we're transitioning from and to. So that kind of, from my perspective, is how I hope to add some value.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Richard, do you want to give us just a bit of background on Poly, Plantronics, and as well, just an intro from your perspective, please?
Well, Dave, thanks, and good morning, Pauline. Good morning, everyone. So Richard from Poly, got a similar level of experience to Ken in the contact center industry. But also I've been working from home myself for quite extensively now. So bringing that knowledge of working with our own customers who put in place working from home operations, and my own experiences of working from home, connecting with teams globally as well for a number of years, hopefully be able to help people out today.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Richard. And last but by no means least, Mark, do you want to say a few words about you and Sonsei as well, please?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I'm Mark. I run a business called Sonsei. Sonsei is an employee-based outsourcer of people and technology that enables clients to homework. So we've been, as some of the other panelists, we've been trying to extol the virtues of home working for quite some time. As you can imagine, we've just had a very, very busy couple of weeks deploying a heck of a lot more home workers. So I think in the last 2 weeks, we deployed something like an additional 500 or 600 workers across different brands in the UK, which I'm happy to talk about in a few moments.
Excellent. So here we have it. We have a really esteemed expert panel with a whole wealth of experience to bring to the discussion. So a huge welcome to everyone. So now is your chance to put your questions to them. So please take the opportunity to do that. I can see some questions coming in already, which we will work through. But just to kick us off, I want to ask a question to Ken, to Mark, and to Richard. If organisations are trying to quickly implement home working and they haven't done it before, where do they start? What first steps should they take? Richard, I'm going to bring that to you because that was one of the questions that you had suggested that we include. So can you give your response to that one firstly?
Yeah, I think both Jamie and Penny covered it quite well, and it was quite interesting to see the statistics earlier on about 77% of people took less than a week to get their home working plan put in place. So I think for contact centres, most of us have been talking about working from home for probably about 8 or 9 years now. So I think the biggest barrier that people have got is just making sure their technology works at home. So that sort of small scale trial to make sure that both your technology, as in all the sort of applications that you control, and the technology that your employees need of the connectivity at home, for example, that's the first thing to do, because that's probably going to be the limiting factor. At the moment, we're all in this together. We want to get the culture right. Everybody wants to make it work. So it's now the technology is probably going to be that limiting factor. So get that trialed quickly and quickly come to a solution would be the sort of first step that I would try. Yep.
Thanks for that, Richard. I guess it's kind of one of those things, fail fast, learn fast, and kind of move on, which is really important, I think. So Mark, what's your kind of, I guess, suggestions to people about how they, if they haven't done it before, what should they do to start things off?
Okay, well, I think probably the obvious thing for me to say at this point is to make sure that people plan and prepare very well. But we're in uncharted waters here, and we haven't really had the time for that, or a lot of organisations haven't had the time for that. So I think probably what I would say initially is really to think what are the key functions that people are looking to deliver. So for some years it's been accepted that managers are going to work from home, but now we're talking about frontline contact centre staff. It's about thinking, what are we really trying to achieve with this? What services are essential? And fundamentally not doing everything all at once, not trying to do everything all at once, but trying to prioritise and thinking what is absolutely key to the business in terms of what we deliver, and therefore breaking that down to clear objectives. Yep.
No, that's really helpful. Thanks for that. And I think you're right. I think it is important that it can sometimes probably feel quite overwhelming, and it's taking a piece at a time and trying to do that well. Ken, what do you think? What's your kind of views on that?
Yeah, similar sentiment. I mean, I'd probably answer the first part with the questions that most of our clients will start to work through, which is the why, the what, and the how. And it's in that order deliberately, because the why question can determine most of the rest. So the current situation means we're having to do this as almost a contingency. That's a very different scenario to doing it if you want to achieve, flex or some other business benefit. So that may mean, as we're hearing in many other areas of the economy, that some corners need to be cut. So I think it's important to consider why we're doing it, and then are there things that we would do more quickly because of that. The what really is the function, as Mark said. What functions of our business do we need to transition, and the how really there's a plethora of kind of flavours, as it were, from the sort of hub and spoke to the sort of 100% virtual model which we represent. So and then the only other thing to close off on this one is don't try and do it alone, because we've been doing this for over 20 years and we've kind of made all the mistakes along the way. So we've got masses of learning. It is, of itself a very complex model that's got many moving parts. So, not just ourselves and Mark, but also on the CCA and other industry bodies. There's a ton of content on there. So ask the expert really is a key element of it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and you're right. There's so many people that have experience that can bring that to the table, and even just in our network alone, there's a whole plethora of expertise that we can bring. So yeah, I think please, if you've got questions around it, please do ask. If you don't want to ask them here, then please do that separately and contact the CCA team with anything that you feel you might need. So I'm going to bring in Jamie and Penny now. There's a couple of questions already come through. And it's related to the question that we had already in place around challenges about making home working secure. So it's always an issue, isn't it? People are worried about fraud. People are worried about compliance and regulation. So Jamie, can I bring you in firstly, just to talk about, have you had any specific issues relating to regulation and compliance that you've had to deal with that have presented itself to you?
So, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jamie. Go ahead, yeah.
Yep, I was just saying, when we initially started this last June, we had the luxury of time, so we weren't introducing it now where we were trying to rapidly get everyone to work from home. So we could work through our checklist, we could work through plans with our risk partners to make sure that everything was right. What to keep us right, we had like a home worker agreement to ensure we had the right people. And it means we could give the colleagues the right level of support by having the right people from the start. We also had our business delivery plan, something that we work towards each week. We had that signed off by risk and our HR partners. So we were quite fortunate when we done it back then. We already had steps in place to make it secure. But if I think about issues that we had, that we've got now especially, is we were expecting colleagues to work from home, just go home and make and take calls using telephony software, Avaya software that they've never used before. So we had issues then, and I know we've got issues now. So we're trying to overcome that by making guides that are really basic for colleagues to easily understand. So that was the initial thing that we didn't have that made home working a success right from the start. We just never had. We never explained it to colleagues. Fully, we just expected them to, here's a guide, go and work from it, but it just doesn't work. You need to have the right tools and the right support for basically the most basic colleague to go and pick it up. So that was one of our learning.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to bring in. It's that I think that lots of organisations will be feeling that pain just now because lots of people don't necessarily want to work from home. They enjoy being in, the kind of social environment that the workplace brings. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it's one I think we'll probably find the answers to maybe more quickly now than we perhaps would have done. So Penny, I want to bring you in.
Sorry, I was just going to add that is a very important point for everybody on the session, that there has been a kind of a view that the best performing contact centre agent would be the best performing home agent, and I think that is not the case. So I think you're absolutely right to identify that, yes, there's lots of technical and technology related things that we can do, but if we think about the people foremost, we're actually transitioning someone out of an environment where they have direct supervision and a support network into a home environment. And to be honest, the part-time model is more or less successful because you have that short, high energy shift pattern. But to transition someone on a full-time into a work from home environment for 5 days is an absolutely critical point.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, thank you for that, Ken. Penny, I just want to bring you in because obviously you've had to do this at speed, and just you wondered if there was any kind of regulation compliance things that you were challenged with or that you're still working through at the moment.
Yeah, a couple. But first of all, I'd just like to, I guess, reiterate what Ken's just been saying. One of the challenges that we have had, I think, is the perception of home working is actually quite different from the reality of home working, And yes, you're right, we have had to do it at speed, so haven't had the luxury of putting additional support in place. But I think one of the things we've learned is that because of the nature of our business, our biggest worry, and it continues to be our biggest worry despite all of the extra stuff we have put around staff, is the mental support for staff. Our guys often take domestic abuse calls, they often take suicide calls, and when you're in an office environment, you can take them away from there, you can put them in a quiet space, you can give them floor walker support, team manager support. When they're on their own in the home, somehow it feels so much more intrusive for people to be taking those kind of calls in their own home. So that's something that we've absolutely taken on board, and it has been one of our, and I think will continue to be one of our biggest challenges. The only other challenges have been very practical things, like our guys are used to working from 2 screens and they've had to use one, and sometimes it's their own tatty little laptop. So there's that kind of stuff that's been going on. I guess the other challenge that we've had is that we've had to, like everybody else, I expect, get some customer communications as well as staff communications out very, very quickly. And what has been brought home to us, and we knew this, and we were actively trying to address it, but obviously not quick enough. We don't hold up-to-date, accurate customer contact details for every single customer. We have those that contact us regularly because we ask them that question, but emails and contact numbers for customers who rarely contact us is something that has become a stark reality and a big challenge for us. So we've actively got a campaign that we're planning over the next couple of weeks because we have reduced our service offering. So we've got some spare capacity to start and collect some of those details. But to answer your question, from a compliance perspective, the only thing we've come across, apart from the obvious desk assessments and that kind of health and safety stuff, depending on where staff are working from, the only other thing we've come across from a compliance perspective is taking our rent payments on over the telephone, which we can't do from home. So we've got a workaround in place to address that issue. That's the only compliance thing we've come across so far.
Okay. No, that's actually kind of very relevant to one of the questions we get in as well around PCI compliance and people trying to understand what they need to do there, and also another question around asking about unique controls that have been put in place to protect customer data if colleagues are accessing this remotely. I guess I want to open that up maybe to others in the panel. Is there anything that anyone can advise around that, about kind of managing and protecting customer data when colleagues are accessing remotely?
Yeah, I'll feed in on that, Paulina. I think a lot of our clients are in the financial service space, so I think whilst we're seeing a lot of companies trying to get and working up and running relatively quickly, I think it's important to say that it's very, very, very important that organisations continue to remember the GDPR, the compliance, and the PCI compliance elements of this. So I think what we've seen when we've been advising organisations or providing them with our platform is that prior to engagement, it's possible to get people working from home technologically, I think, but there are 2 key areas around this which make it somewhat more complex. One is the welfare and the well-being of the individuals, and the other is compliance. Those are probably the 2 big areas. So I think it's important to speak to the experts out there and understand how they're going to implement that compliance. There's a lot of PCI compliance solutions, off-the-shelf solutions, which are available. But clearly, you need expert help to implement those quickly, and they're not overly complex or difficult to implement from what I've seen. But they are available, and it's important to remember that when all this is over, we'll be back into the normal world of GDPR and compliance and PCI compliance, etc.
Ken, a quick question for you, and possibly for Penny as well, or Mark, sorry. You mentioned GDPR there. Do you think now is a time where we ought to be campaigning to put GDPR on hold and identifying vulnerable customers and reaching out to them? Or do you think we really have to still work within that GDPR framework at the moment?
I think this is going to be dictated by the market. I think we are in a very difficult situation in uncharted waters, and so it may well be that some organisations simply cannot hold the standards that we've been operating to within GDPR. But I think my own view of that is that it is possible to maintain GDPR. Companies just have to search out the right systems and processes to do that. There's no reason in our, of course, we continue to maintain it, so there's no reason that it shouldn't be done. But I think a number of organisations will struggle with that. And then it's a question of risk, isn't it? It's a question of risk and balancing up the situation that we're in at the moment versus potential GDPR infringements moving forward and what that will mean. So I guess that's a policy decision, but we'll see how it pans out.
I mean, just to build on that, I think if we look at the clients we currently work with today who are subject to, industry regulators, etc., very complex call types, transactions being done, and obviously using that within a PCI compliant environment. But I'd say to everybody listening, it is entirely possible to do everything that you can do in a brick and mortar centre in a remote way. So there are tools out there, there are processes, there are secure devices that we use to lock down home-based PCs and laptops, which effectively turn them into a dumb terminal. So functionality-wise, they have to go through verification ID and V before they can access any portal within the host or the client. So I think encouragingly, all of this exists, it works. But as we've been saying, you just need to be clear about what you're trying to do, the objectives, and make sure that you've gone through your checklist. So again, there's plenty of guidance out there that you can access.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, guys. I guess I want to kind of pick up on a point because I think it's super important that not that the other points we're talking about are not super important, but Penny, you talked earlier just about the kind of well-being and mental health and challenging calls and the processes around managing that and supporting colleagues. Did you have to take a different approach when you were doing that? And I want to ask everyone their view on what's kind of good practice or what sort of things people need to think about when doing that. Because you're right, it can be. I'm sure it can feel intrusive when it's in your own home and you can't necessarily, go into an office environment and maybe talk to a colleague. So what have you done specifically around that, Penny? That you can share with us.
I think what we've tried to do is as much as we can replicate the support that we had in place in the office. So we have given our staff permission to log off, if you like, and just take 5 minutes to get on the phone separately to either a colleague or a manager. We have some employee support programs in place that we've made sure everybody is aware of so they can tap into that as much as they can. I think moving aside from the more distressing calls, I think one of the biggest challenges we will face, depending on how long this situation goes on, because this isn't just about making home working work under normal circumstances. We are in very different environment at the moment with, the virus being the biggest driver for people like us moving our staff to home working. But to me, the biggest challenge going forward will be to keep the motivation going. Self-isolation in homes is going to be a big issue for us. The fact that our guys are actually talking to people is a plus, but the fact that they're doing it on their own, more and more as we go forward, is going to be a real challenge for us to manage, I think.
Jamie, can I bring you in? Obviously you've had, a before and an after, or a before and during experience that you can bring. Have you had to make changes to how you support colleagues in light of, more people working from home, or how's that work for you guys?
I think the real change that we've made is just making sure that the guides are a little bit easier to understand, because we hand-selected the colleagues first of all, and now we're asking as many people as possible, so it's making sure that the guides are very easy to understand. Things that we can't do, what we initially done as well is we were visiting homes when we done our initial 30 to start with, to make sure that they had the right environment to work in. So we're trying to manage things a little bit differently now. We're just having to check in with the colleagues more, just to make sure that their well-being is fine. We've also got, we're also just making sure that the line managers staying really close to the colleagues to give them that support. As well, on our guide, we're just on the guide and the sort of one of our team collaboration space. We want to make sure that we've got the right tools for the colleagues there. So we've got things like resilience training for them. We've got the group employee assistance program available. And also just referencing the government guidance for vulnerable colleagues and what they should be doing if they've got any queries about their own well-being. And as well as that, we've also got mental health advocates and first aiders available to our 320 colleagues. So it's just making sure that if there's any colleagues that are needing support because they're working in this 9 to 5 environment Monday to Friday, that they've got the tools there. So that's things that we're trying to do differently and focus on now.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess Ken and Mark, you guys have done, this is your kind of bread and butter type thing. Obviously, it is quite exceptional circumstances, as we know, and Penny's kind of brought up, but not just, I suppose, supporting colleagues, but, what kind of advice could you give to people that are trying to support managers in this situation and managing colleagues remotely, particularly if they haven't had that experience before? What would your advice be to some of the attendees today?
Yeah, well, from our perspective, I think we produced a series of white papers on this if anyone's interested afterwards to assist with this. But I think in an ideal world, create the ecosystem, the technology ecosystem that replicates what you're doing inside your current contact center so that you can manage people in exactly the same way that you would if they were actually sitting in a brick and mortar centre. I think that may not always be possible in current circumstances, and because we're trying to do things very quickly. So I think it's very, very important that there's a series of protocols followed. So things like making sure that when people are working from home, that they do have a defined office space and it's not a kitchen table. They feel as if they're actually going to work today, where possible, if it's a spare bedroom. I think it's very important that this is safe and secure and quiet. And so we do all of the checks that enable that to happen. And we use technologies that deploy webcams extensively for that. So we've got a health and safety responsibility to our employees, as most organisations have, to make sure that they're working in a safe, secure and appropriate environment. I think the thing is to treat it as if you're at work. So it should really be operating in the same way. So it's a structured day. So go to work, take a break, a coffee time where you can chat to your colleagues, take a lunch break. So instill the disciplines of working. And I think clearly systems help us to do this, but it's very, very important that we try and replicate that as close as possibly, and also to create the management effect of that. So the same way that you would manage and team leaders and operations managers would manage in the contact center, that those processes are again rolled out. So it really is about thinking and taking into consideration the not just the performance, but the well-being and having the respect for our employees that are working for us.
Yeah, I think I'd probably add communication is key. These are not people you're going to bump into at the water cooler or in the canteen. So I think just taking a step back and thinking, have I heard or spoken to these individuals? Make sure communication happens frequently and often. Chat for us has been an absolute revelation, and even we have clients who've implemented chat within their brick and mortar centres because it gives agents and other elements of the team constant communication. So if there are frequently asked questions coming through, agents can post those questions on the chat stream. Their performance facilitation in our world would then jump onto the stream and actually help them out. So I think communication for us would be the big one. I think the other one is just bear in mind there are lots of virtual learning tools, support aids out there which exist currently. So a lot of our input in terms of working with clients is to convert their brick and mortar classroom curriculum into a virtual learning curriculum. And I think that if you look at some of the gamification that can be done now, making learning more interesting and really, I guess, encouraging individuals to work on their own self-development, because that's something else that can relieve stress maybe, however their time is allocated.
Yeah. Richard, can I bring you in on that question as well? Because, you yourself are, a permanent home worker, but you've also been working in this way for quite some time. From how you manage, teams that you work with or colleagues, and what sort of advice would you offer to people to make it as effective as possible, I guess?
I think there's two of those things here, and I'll see if I can dig these out, but we used to have a questionnaire that we gave to the home worker and the manager, and I'll see if we can dig those out to sort of find the weak points or the people that weren't really suited or needed better coaching on working from home. And in most cases, the actual employees were fine. It's the managers that had the more need of coaching on this one. And the second one for me is that when, if someone said chat was a revelation, I've actually found video to be a revelation. And I'm aware that, someone like Penny, you sort of talked about the invasiveness sometimes, that people might feel this is a further step in this. But when I look at a lot of the employees across businesses, they're young, they're sociable, they're used to visual communications in their private life. So we saw huge benefits in engagement when we moved over to videos for all of our different participants. Just that maybe 10, 15-minute meeting at the start of every day where everybody's on video and they can see each other. It kind of reinforces that engagement you've got with your teams at that what is a particularly stressful point for us all.
Definitely, and and just as a complete aside, CCA being a small team as well, and that's exactly what we've been doing since we've been working from home, is having that video call in the morning, and and I guess it does make you kind of, it's better than just audio because you get to see people and you get to chat with them in a different way, and I think it's a really important point to make. It certainly, we found it really useful in setting up our day as we work through this like everyone else. So I think that's a really good point, Richard. But yeah, if you've got a questionnaire to share on that people can benefit from, that would be really helpful. We will have a set of resources that we can share with you afterwards, because I know both Mark and Ken have already volunteered to provide some additional pieces, so we'll make sure that you get the links out for that. Jamie, I've also had a request in from someone to say, you can tell me this online or offline, it's entirely up to you, if you're able to share your guide for home workers as well. So that's maybe something we can pick up separately, if that's an option.
Yeah, that's fine. I can share it after.
Excellent. Okay. So there are a few other questions I just want to kind of work through. Some people, I guess we mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation, where people are set up quite well to take customers' calls, and some people aren't. I guess, is there any workarounds that are seen to be quite innovative, or anyone that's using different systems that help things basically work from home better by way of answering customer calls? I guess Arise and Sonsei, Mark and Ken, you're slightly different in this, because that's obviously how you work and that's how you're set up. But maybe Penny and Jamie, maybe that's something you can maybe touch on, is just how your kind of whole telephony piece is set up.
Yeah, I can go first. So we've initially it was quite easy for colleagues to go and just use the standard tools when working from home. They were the 30 colleagues that we picked to go ahead and start it, so that there was no issue for them. But when we've been trying to upskill and rapidly increase the numbers, we're looking at different ways for different colleagues. So we're doing a lot of virtual sessions at the moment, so we're hosting it's going to be daily over the next couple of weeks, because we're starting to get everyone a laptop on how to use the tools and systems available. So we're looking at doing more things online, more things with tools like WebExes, to upskill these colleagues.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Jamie. Penny, from your kind of, I guess, you touched on it at the beginning, and your system seemed quite easy to transfer over to a home working environment, but is there anything, again, by way of kind of tips for people looking at that, what they should be thinking about?
From a technology perspective, and I am no techie, I'm being told that what made it easy for us, that we'd recently moved to Skype for Business, and therefore we've got cloud as well, and that apparently made it extremely easy for people to work from home, as opposed to the old traditional ACD telephony platform that we used to have. But in terms of preparing for this, we went out to staff on 2 or 3 occasions to ask them separate questions about their working environment. And if we had our time again, what we'd probably do is just think about the end game up front, so that we only went out with questions once. A prime example of this is that we went out to try and establish who already had equipment, and ask the question, do you have a laptop that you could use if we asked you to work from home? And, we got the answer back, yes, no. What we should have asked was that no family or the other family member would need to use at the time, because what we're coming across is that these people have said, yes, they've got a laptop, but actually my son needs it for his homework, or my partner needs it to work.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things that you learn, don't you, as you go along the way. So yes, that would be definitely something that we've learned as we've gone along. I think the other thing as well is ensure that we've got other areas of the business geared up for this. So when our staff communications are going out to say, and obviously there's decisions being made every day about how we're managing staff, but when a corporate communication has gone out, just make sure our HR colleagues are geared up to receive the extra inquiries that are going to come as a direct result of that. So that was probably another lesson that we've learned the hard way. But as the other panelists have mentioned, just keep the communications going. However, whatever works for them and works for you, then just keep it going to make sure that people know that they're being thought about and they're being cared for. And I guess from a corporate perspective, the last thing I would add is that businesses do need to be flexible. So we have got some people in this environment who have got toddlers who are no longer in nursery or, young school age. And we are trying to be as flexible as we can in terms of keeping them working, but perhaps looking at different working patterns. So we've got a few members of staff who, for example, are prepared to work from 6 till 8 in the morning, a couple of hours there, and then when the partner gets home, they'll do a couple more hours then, and then when the kids go to bed, they'll do a couple more then. So we're trying to move the working patterns around to try and fit in with those people who have the biggest challenges from a childcare perspective as well at the moment.
Yeah. Just on that, it's interesting within our model that we have a way of allowing agents to self-select their schedules. So there's elements of their performance which can be a reward, if that makes sense. So I think there is an opportunity to, as you said, Penny, do things slightly differently by giving that back as a benefit. You can't obviously do that to everybody, but actually we've found within our model that encouraging better performance, then in exchange for that, giving them the benefit of being maybe the first to pick their schedules. And I think that can be very powerful in that remote environment.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Ken. I think we are in exceptional times at the minute, and I think there'll be lots that we can take, when we do get back to, I guess, in inverted commas, normal, and how we maybe manage things differently. And some things will stick. Some things will stick with us, and there'll be those cultural shifts that we're maybe not anticipating just now, because there'll definitely be things that we'll take forward because it's been a benefit to the business. But I guess I'm just conscious of time, and I just want to think about, Penny, you've given us some great tips there, and likewise, Ken. Richard, I just want to bring you in, in one short sentence, if we can, just before we close everything off. I'm going to come around to everyone in turn. What would be your one piece of advice to help businesses succeed in home working? From your perspective.
I think I'm going to go back to the video. I think that is the best way to keep the engagement between teams, between managers, between supervisors. It's quite a stressful time, so being able to see someone who's that connection, and also you as a manager can look at people's body language to help you pick up times when they really are stressed and get them off the phones for a little while.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Richard. Jamie, what would be your piece of advice to people that are listening in today?
Yeah, I think the sort of one thing is just giving the colleagues the tools to enable them to do their job and overall achieve your team's purpose. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
make sure that support network is there. Mark, can I ask the same question to you, please?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's probably about not getting too caught up in the technology in some respects. There are a lot of technology vendors there at the moment pushing different solutions, and I think the way that we've created our infrastructure is a way that enables people to do this, get up and running with their own employees very, very quickly without worrying too much about the specific technologies that they buy. So it would be to I think move that forward. It's take the advice and the help from the experts that are out there to hold your hand through this journey that have been doing it for the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really sound piece of advice. So I'm conscious that we're just very slightly over time, but there's lots that we've covered through the course of the call. We could probably have talked for another hour, I'm sure. But I just really wanted to take the time to say a huge thanks to our panellists today, Ken Wheeler from Arise, Penny Bailey from Guinness Partnership, Richard Kenny from Poly, Jamie Forbes, Scottish Widows, and Mark Walton from Sonsei. I think we got through most of the questions that you posted, but if we haven't, then we'll certainly try and even come back to you as an offline.
Pauline, I was going to leave you with one thought, which I saw on social media this morning. Physical distancing, not social distancing. And unfortunately, social distancing is the phrase, but actually, if we all think about that, it's physical distancing that's key, but let's stay socially in connection with our colleagues.
Most definitely. So, and I'm guessing if anyone, our panel, I'm sure would be happy to come back to you on any points that we haven't covered, or if you get any questions that you think you might be able to glean answers from them, then please do let us know. I'm just going to hopefully you should have my email address. I'm just going to put it back on the screen before we finish off. So any questions, please direct in to me, and I can then field them out to our panellists. So a huge thanks to everyone for taking the time out today to join us. A huge thanks to our panel, and hopefully we will get through this. Life will probably be slightly different, I guess, when we get to the other side. But I wish everyone well and stay safe, and thanks again for joining us today. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.